Okay, this is Jim Quancy, Senior Director of Software Partner Development. I'm going to be leading the talk this morning, this introduction to the next 2 weeks of DevDays Online. A little bit of housekeeping. You have questions as we go. Do use the chat capability to ask your questions. We'll try to answer as we go. There's some chance we may have to wait to the end. Depends on whether I can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're going to have to see how that goes. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be recording this. It will be posted up on the ADN extranet where you can get a hold of it for future reference. We can make PowerPoints available. So, don't be bashful reaching out, but do give us, 2-3 days to kind of get that information up and live. And again, use chat. I'd like to make this as interactive as we can, but we'll see how it goes. Hey, our theme for this year is the desktop and cloud together. Historically, the Forge DevCons held in Las Vegas and Darmstadt, Germany, and Tokyo and China have been about Forge, and the Dev Days has mostly been about the desktops. Today it's going to be quite a mix of both, and some of that has to do with what we're doing, taking the CAD engines that when you already know the APIs for, Revit, Inventor, AutoCAD, Max, and putting them up on the cloud as engines. But I don't want to jump ahead. Let's kind of get started here. It would help. Reminder just on the days. Today's Tuesday, February 26th. We have this keynote, this introduction. Tomorrow will be a Forge API update. Thursday are the design automation APIs. Those are the CAD engines that you already know up on the cloud. Inventor, Revit, AutoCAD, Max. And then the following week, you can see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday again. BIM 360 on Tuesday and Wednesday will be all about the desktops, Inventor, Vault, and Fusion. And then on Thursday will be about the AEC desktops, Revit, Civil 3D, and kind of wink, wink, nod, nod. InfoWorks is really kind of cloud and desktop, kind of a mixed thing. And then Tuesday, March 12th, we end it with the Big Mama, the flagship, an update on the AutoCAD APIs. I will give a one PowerPoint slide on each of the desktops today, just to create a bit of awareness of what's coming and, a little lead in for what you could learn more about over the next week or two. One thing I showed last year during Dev Days, I thought I'd show it again. I know people ask about, how Autodesk is doing. We went through 2 years of losing money, negative cash flow, revenue going down, driven by the change from perpetual to subscription. We are now a good and a half kind of past that chasm. We are back profitable again. We had the biggest, well, I can't really say that yet. Let's just say Q4, which is going to be announced in another 2 or 3 days, was really good. And Q3 was really good, and near tying for revenue and profits was kind of the best quarters ever at Autodesk. And you can see these forecasts. This is something I took straight off the web, public information. So business at Autodesk, after, crossing, this kind of dangerous place where changing business models and cash flow is painful. We're on the other side, and we're moving. And that means investments. And I'll talk more about that, how we're investing back in the business now that the profitability and cash flow and double-digit revenue growth is just cranking along. Most of this is driven by subscribers. When we made that transition from perpetual to subscription, we add, it's amazingly, a pretty steady number of subscribers every quarter. It's on the order of 100,000, 110,000, 120,000 new subscribers. And when I say new, I mean net. We may actually add 130 to 150,000, and then we may lose 20 or 30,000. But every quarter, we're adding 100,000 plus new customers, and that is what's driving the revenue growth. And frankly, that's the opportunity for you, our partners, working with us. The number of Autodesk customers who have platforms that you can add value to continues to go up quarter after quarter. And how many years is this going to go forward? I don't know. At least a few, hopefully several, but clearly the business is growing strongly, and it's creating great opportunities for partners, whether you're a system integrator, an ISV, or just one of our customers, who's doing internal software development. You want to know that you're investing effort in a technology that's going to be there for the long term, because it's coming from a successful business. Okay, so just a quick look ahead to what you learn over the next 2 weeks on the desktops. What's happening with AutoCAD, kind of the basics. Those of you who've been attending DevDays for years, this will be a familiar graph. Things you want to know if you're using the C++ APIs. Visual Studio 2017 is still the tool, so the same as we had with AutoCAD 2019 is what we have with AutoCAD 2020. And if you didn't notice there, the code word for AutoCAD 2020 is qubit. Little take on quantum technology. There will be some updates you want to do to Visual Studio. You can see that there. You've been running on for 2019 AutoCAD 15.3. You want to do update 2, 15.7.5 or earlier, but don't go later. What else? So binary compatibility for Object.ARX apps that ran on 2019 should just run on 2020, but clearly you need to check. For those of you with .NET and Lisp, it should just work. But again, you should get the beta and get the release software, run your tests, be quick to let us know if you run into any problems. I really recommend you do testing early so that if you spot something we missed, we've got time to deal with it before millions of customers have it. DWG format, we go 3rd year in a row with the same DWG format. So again, supporting AutoCAD 2020 for most of you should be relatively straightforward and relatively easy. Now, those of you who may be using and supporting old 32-bit AutoCAD or LT or Rasa Design, we are dropping support for 32-bit. That boat has passed on, or that water has passed under the bridge. So be aware, 32-bit is over. I suspect most of you are chuckling like, really? Who worries about 32-bit? But I know there's some of you who do, and I've actually talked to a few of you who've had to make some changes, and some of it had to do around, working with VB, and you may have some third-party components you use that are 32-bit. So if you do, you need to change soon if you want to move forward with the 2020 release of AutoCAD. How about Inventor? 0 removed objects in the next 2020 release, 10 new objects with 130 new functions, 3 removed functions, 40 new functions on existing objects, and 4 modified functions. So continuing to expand the Inventor API, still more work to do. Again, attend the class taking place next week on Inventor. And Revit 2020, I thought I'd mention one of the customer features here. I think this is a big one. There are quite a few new customer features with Revit 2020 coming, but I think a big one is the single user cloud models. Makes it very, very easy for an individual to store and access their Revit models in a BIM 360 instance. You can just go to a folder and have that BIM 360 take care of where your Revit model lives, and then it's easier for other people to access to see what you're up to. The other thing, if you've made the move to work sharing, to design collaboration, to multiple people working on a Revit model at the same time, it's actually quite easy to take what starts out as kind of a one person at a time Revit model up on BIM 360 and make it available for work sharing by just simple saying enable work sets, and kind of off and away. So again, our theme for today, helping connect the desktop and the cloud. Some things are best done on a desktop. Some things, like collaboration, are best done on the cloud. Revit 2020 APIs, just some of the enhancements in the 2020 APIs. Again, open, save cloud models on BIM 360 docs. Convert a cloud model into a work shared cloud model. Again, this is about design collaboration, teams working together on the same model at the same time. Topography surface created from triangulation. We've been doing work around this integration between the land, the infrastructure, and the buildings, including better integration with things like Civil 3D. Enhancing schedules, kind of bread and butter. Shared coordinates, site location, set geo-coordinate system, base point. Again, this tying together the land, the infrastructure with BIM. And as we say, there's BIM for infrastructure and there's BIM for buildings, and they are coming together. Cloud model support in documents, 2D exporting, plans, elevation sections, view templates, and there's more. This is just a small list. You will learn more when we go through this later in DevDays. Again, I encourage you to listen to the kind of full hour-long review that goes through Revit, Civil 3D, I think Navis, InfraWorks. Okay, so Forge Web Service APIs, the biggie is the Design Automation API. So these are the CAD engines in the cloud. We've had AutoCAD up there for about 2.5 years now. You'll see under automation, it's kind of half gray, half light blue. That half gray is we have the public betas for the Revit Design Automation Engine, for the Inventor Design Automation Engine, and for the 3ds Max Design Automation Engine. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, especially for those of you who are desktop, because you can take what you know already on the desktop and apply it to the cloud, again, where appropriate. And let's talk a bit more about that. So design automation APIs, running automation scripts on your design files. As I mentioned, AutoCAD's been up there for quite some time. Revit's a biggie. We had a Forge Accelerator in Boston a week or two back, and we had 24 people, every one of which successfully created proof of concepts using the Revit Design Automation Engine. Create, edit, or publish Revit models, automate the creation of Revit families. Checking models against company standards turns out to be very popular. So this is not about replacing desktop Revit. If you're creating a new model, it's interactive, you're thinking through it as you're designing, that works great on the desktop. But there'll be certain tasks that will be what I'll call scut work that you want to automate away. Or again, things like model checking, which is a bit of almost police work to make sure that the BIM at the end of the day is really, really good. You'll be able to do these automations on the cloud. So as designers are working away, management and the designer themselves can be notified when something's amiss. Maybe a parameter's not right, or a parameter's missing, or a family's been used that is inappropriate, or whether it's an industry standard or a government standard, something's not met. And I'll show some examples shortly. We'll run some videos. Autodesk Inventor, again, public beta. Now, both of Revit and Inventor are public betas. And what does that mean? That means it's mostly complete. It's reasonably stable. It is version controlled. So if you build code on it today and we fix a bug in 2 weeks, we will change the version. And you do not need to worry about the app that you built breaking because we did a version change. And, it's always important with the cloud, making sure your services are versioned. Now, you might say, well, how come it's not fully released? Why is it a public beta? And that has to do mostly with scalability. We need you to use it so we can see how well it scales. You know, one thing is the design automation engine's working when there's one person or 5 people or 10 people running tasks, running jobs at the same time. That's different when there's hundreds. We think we've done the work we need to do to support scalability, but we need you to use it. We need to see how it scales. We need to see what the performance is under load. So if you can get started, that we'd really appreciate it. It's going to help us get it right. I hope these public betas will become general release late this year, hopefully by Forge DevCon, Autodesk universities. But we'll see. It depends on how much you use it and the feedback you give us. So Inventor, create, edit, or publish Inventor models. Simplify building product manufacturing models. And I've got an example of that shortly. I'll video and you can see that. Configurator, a lot of things. Configurators can be quite sophisticated and there could be hundreds of rules that need to be managed. Inventor Design Automation is not a configurator. It's a modeler. It's a way to give feedback to a user for a relatively simple configuration where the number of parameters may be a handful or a dozen or 2 dozen. It might work just great, but you probably are going to need to partner with someone who knows configurators if you're doing something more sophisticated than that. 3ds Max is also up there too, public beta. If you need to do some advanced rendering, something a little more photorealistic as the end result, you also have that engine. The other thing I thought I'd mention, because it's a common question, it has to do with Revit. The Revit design automation engine doesn't support Dynamo yet. It's on our need-to-do list. We are planning for it, but it's not there today. And I don't know exactly when it might come. I'm hoping the end of the year, but I'm not sure. The other one is IFC support is missing in the public beta as it is today. I'm hoping that will be there by the time we go to general release, but just recognize you may see it missing. The other thing with the Revit design automation engine is it doesn't support work sharing. It doesn't support, otherwise known as C4R. You can't work on Revit projects that other people are working on simultaneously. You can only work on Revit projects that are published. Again, that is something we want to change and is something on our backlog and something we will change, but I can't say exactly when that's going to happen. And anyone who, some of those limitations, if they're key to you, if you haven't told us already, reach out to me, reach out to some of my team, whether it's using, one of the forums, let us know. Okay, so what do you do with those design automation engines? You automate. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Just run this video by one of our customers, Boyd Construction, and I didn't say that right. My French is not very good. But here we are on a web page, and we are going to create a Revit project tailored to the specifics of the project at hand. Is this a commercial space? How many floors is it? What are the characteristics? Is this steel or concrete? And we're going to use this to create that initial Revit project on the fly. So you can imagine it may be a building information manager, somebody VDC, virtual design construction, wants to create an appropriate project. And this person may be somebody who used to use Revit years ago, but they kind of got into that management position and they're not really a Revit user anymore. But there's still a person who helps set up new projects, and they can create that first Revit file project that people are going to use moving forward in a very automated from a web page way. Another example of what you can do with design automation for Revit. This was done by one of our partners, Zinapps, out of the Netherlands, for one of their customers. Here's lighting being selected at BIM Object, one of our partners in Sweden. Here's actually a Unity-powered experience to get the real-time lighting right. And now, looking at the different lighting in the different rooms, adding lighting, this can be automated. Look at the area, look at the lumens required, specify the lighting, calculating lighting levels, calculating costs. And then what do? Take all that information and push it straight into a Revit project in BIM 360. So they literally took the project out of BIM 360, added the lighting to it in an automated way, driven by a web page design, and pushed it right back into BIM 360 where the project team can see it. Exciting stuff for those of you who are building product manufacturers, or work with building product manufacturers. This idea that you can help your customers use your products the best way, using the full capabilities of your products in a very easy way, and giving that tailored, fast experience is absolutely cool stuff. Another example of using Revit design automation is just creating families. And I'm not going to play this whole video. It takes about 2.5 minutes, kind of takes a while to run. I actually think some of this, you wouldn't really use a kind of a website like this to create families, but maybe I'm wrong. You might have a spreadsheet, you might have a database, and you want to create a set of families in an automated way. Though maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you, again, a building product manufacturer or a machine manufacturer. This could be Inventor in the background. Want to give your customers the ability to configure your product in a tailored way and deliver them a family or deliver them a model or a part in real time, straight from a website. Again, I do suggest people be careful on the configurator side. We have a number of partners who specialize in what I call kind of large-scale, sophisticated configurators. Somebody like Technicon or Configure One, or there's a lot of people out there. But for basic configurators, where the number of parameters is modest, yes, you can build these kind of website experiences, taking advantage of these engines, whether it's Revit, whether it's Inventor. And with that, let me keep moving. Now, conflicts between designers. You're going to love this one. This video here is actually looking at a BIM 360 folder project. It could be looking, frankly, at anything. It could be a folder in Google Drive or Box or Dropbox or SharePoint. Doesn't really matter. It's looking for changes in an RVT, and when it sees a change in a Revit file, it grabs it. It merges it with another Revit project, and it runs a clash detection. And it will automatically create an issue in BIM 360, and it will create a viewable so you can see where the clash is. What you're seeing here, this Hangfire dashboard is really a dashboard a software developer would use, not something you'd show a customer, just to show you what's happening in the background as we work through from a BIM 360, webhooks, passing the file to design automation for Revit, running the clash detection, click to view the issues, creating the issues, getting passed back to BIM 360, and then viewing the clash. Right, and there's the clash. So we had a designer who may be an architect and then a structural engineer, and we did a clash kind of on the fly. And what's this all about? This is about letting designers and engineers know when a problem happens right then and there. When they're still in their head, they just did that work when making a fix is quick and easy, and not doing a clash 2 weeks later and having to reach back to the person who made the mistake and them going, oh, that was 2 weeks ago. Clearly, when you make a change immediately upon the problem happening, upon you're creating a conflict, it's easy to fix. It helps you be a better designer. Okay, now here's kind of putting it all together. We are tying together Inventor and Revit. We reached into BIM 360. We found a Revit family. See these stools? There's no backs on them. Those stools are actually done in Inventor. we're going to use Inventor design automation to change those tools to put a back on them. And then we're going to take that result, update the Revit family, and then update the Revit model, all in one set. And you can see here, it's using Forge data management for pushing files, Forge model derivatives so you can see results, and the viewer so you can see results. Design automation for both Revit and Inventor. Again, a great example of hooking together the manufacturing and the building. And there's our family. We've updated the chairs in this design to have backs. Pretty cool stuff, tying it all together. So use the APIs and code you already know. You already have code that works with Revit, that works with Inventor, that works with AutoCAD, that works with 3D Studio Max, and reuse it to deliver your customers value on both the desktop and the cloud as best fits your customers' needs and desires. Now, I'm going to talk a little later about design versus make. For many of you, the business opportunity, you've been delivering capability on the design side, will help your customer take the design side and deliver it on the make side. Because most of our customers, the real money is made when the product is made, whether that's a building, a machine, whatever that happens to be. So let's talk about that design make. Oh, I have a question here. Can you correct Inventor parameters with Revit parameters? You can, but I won't say that's automatic. That's about mapping parameters in two different models to a single data source. Maybe a spreadsheet, maybe a database, and a little later we'll talk about something called the Forge data platform in HFDM, which will make that easier for people who kind of don't want to own and manage their own kind of database that connects these parameters. Okay, design and make. So a little bit of a story here. Starting with a designer, sitting at their desk, an engineer sitting at their desk doing design, saving those designs as files, RVTs, DWGs, IPTs, 3DS, whatever they happen to be. And there being many revisions, one after the other, as changes are being made kind of day by day. And then you get a second designer, and they're working on their part of the design. Maybe these are two linked Revit projects. Maybe these are XREF together DWGs. Maybe this is about different parts being designed as part of an assembly. And then the connections between the references between what the two designers are doing. We get a third designer, and maybe the third designer isn't in the same company. They're somewhere else. And everybody here is familiar with this. You're doing this coordination between multiple people, multiple revisions. It's pretty messy. It tends to be a bit serial. You typically, except for AutoCAD, except for Revit, work sharing, you don't have the same people working in the same files at the same time. So you end up with this very file-centric. The other thing is these files can be big. 50 megabytes, 100 megabytes. Not unusual to have a 200 or 300 megabyte Revit file. I've seen 200 megabytes, 1,000 XREF drawings in AutoCAD, a couple hundred megabyte Inventor assembly, not unusual. So when you're sharing, it takes time. It may take a few minutes to get that file off that server, whether that server's, behind your firewall on your local intranet, LAN, or whether you're getting it off the cloud from wherever, SharePoint box, BIM 360, whatever. Now what's happening is our customers are digitizing their companies, whether it's an architectural firm, a consulting engineering firm, a manufacturer, a production company doing game or video. They are digitizing their companies. And they've got two kinds of data. They've got these design and engineering files, right, that they're getting from the design engineering department, from the creators, using their desktops. And they've got enterprise data. Enterprise data could be ERP data, cost data, schedule data. And you know, this data is different because design and engineering files are, it's kind of binary voodoo. Enterprise data is just data sitting in a proper database. And then you get the users, the customers, the people who are using this enterprise data, right? The people who are making that final product, whether they're in a factory, in the field, construction site, you know, wherever it may be. Now here's what, and this is typical with, you know, what Autodesk has been doing. We can see AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, 3D Max on the design side. Autodesk is bridging between design and make, and anybody who's been listening to what Autodesk has been saying will know this. You get services like BIM 360, you get Fusion 360, a Shotgun on the production entertainment side of things, where they're both resources for design side and make side. Now, Autodesk has been acquiring companies on the make side. Assemble, Plan Grid, Building Connected, these are all acquisitions in the last year. Autodesk has spent well over $1 billion on the make side. So why am I talking about this? Again, opportunity for many of you on the make side. Whether you're an Autodesk customer who, of course you do design and make, but maybe you work in the engineering department and less on the manufacturing side. There is opportunity here helping bridge that gap. Maybe you're an ISV or a system integrator. Huge opportunity in designing, in bridging design and make. Now, Autodesk has also been investing in partners, you know, ESA, Manufacton, you know, and so on. A lot of these folks on the construction side. I will let you know, Autodesk made a strategic decision about 6 months ago to double down on the construction side. That's why on this make side, you see all construction, you know, building related acquisitions and investments. Our intention is, you know, that's a 2-year kind of double down. If you're in manufacturing, we're not forgetting you. We're investing, and we will be doubling down in manufacturing after we've cemented our position on the construction side. So you can expect heavy, much heavier investments than we're doing today on the manufacturing side in the future. Think a year or two from now. Okay, now we have customers, people like Royal BAM Group in the Netherlands, in the Benelux region. People like Toshiba, they're elevator folks. ISVs, partners like HBCAD in Belgium, Structuresoft in Canada. So we have partners, customers and partners who are bridging this design and make. There's a whole lot of value in not just doing better, faster design, but bringing those designs to market, doing a better job delivering that information to the field. And I'll also say from a value to the business, there's a lot more money spent and potentially can be saved on the make side than on the design side. And many of us have spent a lot of time helping save money, time, and effort on the design side. Look to the make side. Look at the opportunities there. Whether you have some expertise on the make side, whether it's manufacturing or construction, or whether you have partners or customers you sell to who are both design and make, who you can work with to make that jump to the make side. I'm going to run a little video here, which is one of the which shows Royal BAM Group and one of our system integrator partners, CADAC, who are bridging design and make. And Royal BAM Group is a design and make company. They're an early adopter of using our Forge technology to help bridge the desktop with make. They are componentizing, prefabricating components for buildings. So it's funny, we talk about Forge as Lego blocks. They talk about a building as being built with standard Lego blocks that are put together in different ways. You know, it starts with the desktop, giving the designers modular pieces that they can design with. I'll let this run a bit. This is sort of configuring buildings only for a desktop designer. Could be a consulting engineer, could be an architect. the fun part is an integral part of their doing this is delivering that information in near real time to the factory floor, as they have large portions of the building built in a factory and then assembled on site. And that's where huge gains in productivity, huge gains or reductions in time to completion happen. And I'm going to stop right here, right? This is the people up in the office and the people down on the fabrication floor having the same access. And this extends out to the construction site, to the actual user who is putting together the product, again, whether it's a building or a piece of equipment. And having the same information available at the time without days, weeks, or months of lag. So when a change has to be made at the last minute, which happens, it absolutely happens, you know where you're at and you can make good decisions that are cost effective. And this is where manufacturing meets design. Relatively new on the building side, but kind of old hat if you're a product manufacturer. Okay, so back to this diagram I was looking at earlier. There is this file-based approach does have its issues, some of which I've already talked about, and that has to do with on the file side, on the desktop side, data can take time. If you want to get data out of a file, it's typically more than a minute, and it could be hours or days, depending on, do you have people working? Is it subcontractors? Is it suppliers? Is it, a gigabyte project that takes 20 minutes just to open? So that timing is an issue. The digitized company, what our customers want, enterprise data is typically available in less than a second. I want to get the name of a supplier or a cost or something about schedule. I can get data out of a database. I can run a query, and that happens in less than a second. But that digitized company, when they're working with these design files, again, it takes a long time. And the customers I want it now. So we do have this, we as an industry, people working with design and engineering data, we've made these great advancements in terms of sharing information more easily, having teams work together, being able to leverage the cloud to share information, but it's still not as timely and crisp, and I want it now, as customers expect, as millennials expect. And that's where we come into this data at the center. And Autodesk has been talking about this for about 2 years now, but we're getting closer to this time, and I want everyone here to think about it. Autodesk is building this Forge data platform. It's about our apps working on a single set of data at the center, not replicating data, not pushing files around, eliminating the time lag of pushing big files around. Now, do not think of data as a single database. Think of federated data. Data belongs where it belongs. There will be design and engineering data that we believe in the fullness of time, most of which belongs in the Forge data platform. But there's other kinds of data. Cost data may be in a cost estimating system or an ERP system. Schedule data may be in, P6, the old Primavera, or, it's maintenance data and you're using Maximo or, Tririga. So you have these federated source of data, but all the data is in a proper database. You can run queries and get answers in seconds, not in minutes, not in hours. So that's clearly where we want to go. So, we see this time when the designers, across several companies working on a single set of data, there's their HFDM, design and engineering data, being available to the enterprise in near real time, and really eliminating this whole file problem we have today. Large files, hundreds of versions of very large files, and trying to sort out changes and what's changed and when did it change and who did what. The type of problem that was solved a long time ago with enterprise databases. So now the thing is, the challenge here is, this is a huge leap to go from our file-centric world today, and there's legal and government, there's processes that are tied to files. I need my Revit file. I need my PDF version of my DWG. I need my PDF of my manufacturing sheet that came out of Inventor or SolidWorks or whatever. All these processes. When we know the place we need to get is real data, real time, so we're all working on the same data at the same time. The experience many of you will have had already with Google Sheets, Google Docs, Office 365. In fact, Office 365, Microsoft has kind of shown the way on how to kind of bridge this. How do we have both a file-centric environment and a data-centric environment? And I can go both ways depending on, who I am and what I'm trying to do and, how my team wants to work. Now, I will say, when you have a mixed environment, it is trickier. It takes some time. I know it took me several months to kind of figure out kind of the best practices around that kind of mixed environment like you get with Office 365. But this is what you're going to see from Autodesk. And we're talking likely public beta by the end of this year, something in production early next year, where you will have the ability to have information both on the file side, if you want to work that way, and some of that file information, an increasing amount of that data that's in files, also being mirrored in an AFDM format where it's available quickly. So this is what's coming. Be prepared. Talk to your customers. Think about what you do that's file-based, and then where that leads to unhappy customers because you don't have accurate data or people have different sources of truth. You've got data in a file, and then you have extracts of that data that other people use, and those get disconnected, and from that comes mistakes or these slow processes that take hours, days, and weeks. The Forge Data Platform is meant to be that platform that allows you to work with both files and data in a single, uniform, consistent way. And that's what you can expect from us. We actually have a few customers working with some of this today. A few lighthouses helping us get it right. I'd say it's an alpha. We will have a handful of alpha customers over the next several months. And again, stay tuned late this year. We can give you more detail. Again, some of you we've talked about this for about 2 years now without giving you something you can touch. And late this year, I expect we'll be in a position to give you something to touch. But I need you to think about what would you want to do first. And don't pursue, I'm going to do something big and replace everything I have with a completely new architecture. Pick something small, some simple process, some subset of data that's in a file that really has a pressing need for high performance access in near real time as design changes happen. That's where you want to start. That's where you want to learn. And it's like a baby teething. You need to crawl, walk, run. So be prepared for that. Now, in the fullness of time, files do need to go away, but yeah, that's probably a 5 or 10 year experience. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Now, some of you may be in an area where you can go right away. And this reminds me of the transition to BIM, where small architectural firms went full BIM, full Revit, all the time with every customer. And it was probably a good 5 years before a large number of design firms had made that leap. And has it been 10 years since now we have not just the architectural side, but now the mechanical contractors, the construction firms. But it started with a few customers, a few small ones, or a few big customers who had small teams or relatively tightly framed tasks that they could automate, where they started with BIM first. So we're going to go through this with this Forge Data Platform, this this change to data at the center. And, it's not just about Autodesk technology, the Forge data platform, because it's about federated data. It's about ERP data, cost data, schedule data, people data, and that design and engineering data that we're going to serve up through the Forge data platform. Okay, so that's something you can expect. So what have I talked about? Using the CAD engines to automate, something many have been doing on the desktop for years. You can now use design automation engines, Max, AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor. Now, Revit and Inventor, I ask people, they say, well, can I deliver something to a customer on the public betas? The answer is yes, but I suggest you do that where you tell your customer it's a beta. Again, those engines are version controlled. Your app won't break tomorrow because we make a change, assuming you're doing proper versioning when you use the design automation engines. But you should recognize we haven't fully proved out scalability and performance at scale, which is why you should frame these things with your customers as beta. And when we get the final release, hopefully, around the end of the year, or hopefully around Forge DevCon AU, we'll have proved out that scalability, and you and us will have a better idea on how to make the best use of these engines. And last, forward-looking, really not something that you're going to deal with this year, but you should talk to customers about, you should think through. I talk to big customers, big design and construction firms, global construction firms, about CDE, Common Data Environment, CDM, Common Data Model. I have those conversations a couple times a month today. And, so they care. So whether you're one of those customers listening today, we hear you, it's coming, we're going to help, or whether you have those large global engineering firms, design firms as your customer and you want to do more with them, or you're a startup and want to show those big customers you are leading the way, this data at the center is a huge opportunity. Again, crawl, walk, run. It's going to be a several-year transition, but we need to get started. Whether it was BIM, whether it was Forge 4 years ago, whether it was parametric modeling a decade back on for machines and products, you got to get started. These things take time. You need to learn. Customers need to learn. So come on with us. Let's get started. And with that, just a reminder, what's coming up. Tomorrow's an update on the Forge API, Thursday's Forge Design Automation. We've talked a lot about Forge Design Automation. So Thursday, check in, same time, same place. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, we'll get into BIM 360 and then come desktops, Inventor, Revit, Vault, Fusion, Civil, InfoWorks, and then ending on the following week, Tuesday, March 12th, with the biggest tanker of the group and what's happening with the AutoCAD APIs. And with that, it is Q&A time.
We do have 2 questions which are at present unanswered. One is I have not yet answered, so you can see it in a Q&A console.
Q&A console. I need to figure out. Oh, Q&A console. There we go. From Brian Nickel. Any chance that you will be connecting to external cloud resources? Talking about digitized enterprises. We've migrated to a Dropbox cloud server and would like to plug this into a BIM 360 option rather than duplicating files. Brian, it's easy to synchronize files between both Dropbox and BIM 360. You can absolutely do that. Does that have us duplicating files? It really does. And as I kind of just went through, that's the environment we are in today. We have these enterprise repositories and BIM 360. Now that said, we have webhooks. We have the ability to easily keep that information between the 2 systems synchronized. Now that is file level synchronization, so it's not really real time. And one has to think about that. Do you do it kind of on demand? Do you do it weekly? Do you do it daily, you know, in the evening, do the station between Dropbox and BIM 360. Do you build your own web page where people can see both what's in BIM 360? So here's the other thing to recognize. You could build a web page that allows your users to directly reach into BIM 360 to see designs, whether that's a model or sheets. So those are your options today. And we have more than a few customers kind of doing that shuffle today. We've got someone here saying Dropbox is not a secure environment. Well, that makes for an interesting debate. I happen to be really good friends with the folks at Dropbox. I know several people there. We talk to them frequently. I don't know how many people know Dropbox recently added the capability that you can open DWG files from your desktop. It'll directly open from Dropbox into AutoCAD, your desktop AutoCAD, and it'll directly open into AutoCAD Web. Maybe you're on a mobile device. So we're definitely making enhancements there. And then multi-factor or authentication. Yep, that's a goodie. Now Autodesk has been adding multi-factor authentication. You know, I am not an expert in that area, but absolutely. Clearly, I'm a big fan. Here at Autodesk, we use multi-factor for almost everything these days. My phone rings probably 2 or 3 times a day when I'm trying to access some of our enterprise data, and it wants to verify who I am. So I encourage you to reach out to my team, say, hey, I want to talk about multi-factor authentication. Give us some background and what you're referring to. Is this around BIM 360, or again, is it around dealing with Box or Dropbox or one of these SharePoint, and how their multi-factor authentication will work in terms of files and projects that are being managed by an Autodesk service or some other service. Happy to help. Another question we got Michael here. Will you support custom user interface from partner apps within BIM 360? Michael, this is coming. It is on our backlog. We are absolutely going to do it. The intention being within BIM 360, you could have your own tab that presents your own user interface. Today, what people do with BIM 360 is from within BIM 360, they will link out to their own website, their own interface where the user will do work, will do work grabbing information out of BIM 360, and then when it's done, put it right back into BIM 360, allowing the user to then close out your website and be back in BIM 360 with the latest information. Yes, in an ideal world, that should happen all in BIM 360. Well, I won't say in an ideal world. It depends on the use case. Some users want to work in a BIM 360 environment. That's their center of the world, and they want that in BIM 360 experience. And that will come, I am hoping, by the end of the year, though I am not positive about that. I've seen some examples of what that would look like. Now, there are other users who BIM 360 is not the center of their world, and the idea of punching out from BIM 360 to another environment is what they want to do. And we have some ISVs. Some of you, do you have 2 environments, kind of an in BIM 360 environment and an external environment? Interestingly, this is not much different than what we've all gone through with desktops. Is it when you build apps for AutoCAD, Inventor, Revit, do you need an in-app experience or a simple interface to an out-of-app experience? And you'll have those same trade-offs. And our intention is to absolutely enable both. Okay, it's my impression that there will be a connector with MS Teams and BIM 360 from Dan. And I'd say we are looking at that, Dan. What was an example that came up the other day? An interface with Microsoft Flow. We are going through a bit of a debate on how much Autodesk builds in the BIM 360 as just a feature, and whether it's best actually a partner do that. We have a lot of system integrators. We have a lot of good ISVs who are partners of ours. The basic APIs are there with BIM 360, or at least enough to do some level of integration with MS Teams. So there is a discussion about that. We'd love to hear from you. And when I say hear from you, hey, if you're a system integrator in ISV and you say, hey, I want to do that, and you want to know if Autodesk is going to do it, hey, reach out, let us know you're thinking of doing it. Because if we get a partner or two who says, you're going to do it, maybe we'll decide not to do it. We'll let you do it. You know, clearly, if one of you do it, you tend to move faster. We're a bigger company. We have to deal with the global implications of those kind of integrations. So, and what can take us a year might take one of you 3 months to prototype and 6 months to release. Love to hear from you. And you know, if someone outside builds it and it's really good, we'll buy it. We'll buy it from you. And we have a history of doing that. It's a number of partners who've had the pleasure of having Autodesk pay a few $100,000 to buy a piece of integration technology off them. Okay, Katie's asking, if you are typically developing in-house desktop add-ins, what is the first thing you recommend learning for future coding development? Wow, here's the trick. Full stack web developer. Class, there's coding camps around the country, local community colleges. When I say full stack, that means being a developer on the client side, so being able to develop on the browser, typically JavaScript, you know, working with CSS, and also on the server side, the back end. Working with things like Node. The back end may be, you know, .NET, C#, might be JavaScript, might be TypeScript. There's different back ends. Could be C++. It's kind of up to you and the environment. And full stack, you know, as a desktop developer, learning the web side, the client side, frankly, isn't all that hard. My engineers, I've had a dozen engineers go through it. The first 2 months were painful. After 6 months, they were pretty good at it. I actually have people who've been full stack web developers who came for the desktop for over a year now. And when you ask them about going back to the desktop, they say, hell no. And it has to do with that whole code, build, make, wait 5 minutes, wait 10 minutes. Oops, that didn't work. Let me do that again. Where with the web, changes are right there immediately. On the left side, you're coding and trying. On the right side, you're seeing the result. It's such a much more fluid, it's a liberating environment. And it's easy, it actually is easier. So those of you who are doing desktop design, full stack web developer, that's what you want to do. And frankly, having both skills, both desktop and full stack, you will be absolutely invaluable. It'd be an unbelievable career builder. You will be the person in demand by everybody. You will never have to worry about finding a job, and the pay is great. Okay, Jonathan's asking, are there any plans for large model size optimization in the Forge viewer? Example, 700 to 800 megabyte Navisworks files. Okay, now we have been making optimizations of the viewer. Over the last year, the viewer has probably gotten twice as fast working with large models. Now, that said, Navisworks is already a highly optimized file format. So if you're working with Revit or AutoCAD or Inventor, you will have noticed these performance increases. If you work with Navis, you didn't notice as much of a performance increase because Navis does such a good job. And that has to do with things like instancing and decimating and simplifying of the model. That said, we are absolutely continuing to work on that. We test 10 gigabyte models as our how good a job are we doing on performance. So I'm going to tell you, yes, performance will get better, but I'll also tell you Navis is challenging. But we're working on it. Okay. And Jonathan asked on desktop, and I'm going to assume, Jonathan, that's asking about the performance of the Navis desktop when it comes to very large Navis models, gigabyte size. And I'll profess, I don't know, Jonathan. I'm not close to Navis. I suggest you listen in on the DevDays session taking place, is that next week? In that area. No, I will also say though, the thing, oh, you're actually asking about the client side Forge Viewer. You know, the Forge Viewer, whether, you know, whether that's on a mobile device, whether that's on a desktop, you know, really doesn't matter that much. Now, clearly, you know, with mobile devices, you've got more resources, more memory, more CPU power, so it doesn't slow down as much. But, you know, clearly it's building the same experience that runs on, you know, whether it's a Chrome client on a mobile device or Chrome client on a desktop, you kind of have the same issues. Now, I will make the point, for some people with really big problems, the answer is about pulling in the right data, aggregating just the data you need and not bringing in the whole model all at once. And we've worked with a number of partners and customers on this one about, you know, typically that model before it gets to Navis will have been already broken up into several, you know, Revit files, several different EWGs, maybe it's DGN files, maybe it's mechanical files, Inventor, SolidWorks that are in a machine room, and bringing together, aggregating that model information, just what you need. Because clearly, if you take architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, machines, and you put that all in the same model at the same time, that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot. And one can do a better job helping the user decide, hey, here's the 3 of the 10 different kind of sources of the models that I want to see at this point, so I'm just going to bring in part of the model. And that aggregation can be done at the Forge level, where you're bringing in, for those of you who are Forge fluent, 3 or 4 different SVF files and not 10 different SVF files, so that the strain you're putting on your client resources, the memory footprint you're putting on, isn't so bad. Now, that said, we are doing things, we are optimizing, so you can handle bigger models just overall. I know like one customer we're working closely with has to do with rebar. You know, if you get a big project, you'd have 100,000 pieces of rebar. Working with that in the viewer is challenging at the moment, and we're doing optimizations in Forge, model derivative, optimizations in the viewer technology itself to make that better in the future. And you will see optimizations in different areas kind of as we go. But I don't want to mislead you that that problem is going to get solved overnight. The other thing that I think we all recognize is that the more we increase the capability of the viewer, the bigger the models people throw at it. And I don't think that's going to stop. Just so you can think about where we're going, I know a customer who has, is it a 300 level of detail, 40-story building? It is 140 gigabytes. And clearly being able to kind of pre-sort what you want to view, whether that's within a bounding box or certain systems, is something that's not going to end soon when we talk about these high level of detail, large projects. Okay, what else we got? Oh, thanks for the thanks. William Song, are there any plans for online Revit like AutoCAD on web.autocad.com? Okay, so taking the desktops and making them full-fledged web clients, browser clients, is not going to happen anytime soon. Yes, we have AutoCAD Web, which is actually core AutoCAD running a browser. with a modest number of AutoCAD capabilities. So we will see how that goes. But I'll tell you, Revit is not AutoCAD. We're a long way from being able to take a piece of Revit and using things like web assemblies, which is what we're doing on the AutoCAD side, to run it in the client. The thing people, and I don't know if people have noticed, we have changed the licensing of the desktops to allow for virtualization for you to run desktops remotely, Citrix style, on Azure, on AWS, on Google. Now, I will say that is, you can't expect the same performance all the time when you're doing intensive large 3D modeling. When you virtualized it, you do get this, depending on the distance between you and the servers, are they 50 miles away, 100 miles away, 1,000 kilometers away? It will matter. A 200 millisecond time lag versus a 1 second time lag, you do notice when you're doing interactive capabilities. So that's another approach to that. That will work for some people, but not everyone. To be clear, for a lot of day-to-day, I'm moving fast, one hand on the keyboard, one hand on the mouse, rapid heavy-duty design, the desktop has been tuned for years and is a thing of beauty and will be the right tool for a lot of people. But yeah, there are some people who doing some limited capabilities or some limited kind of activities. We're using virtualization or using a native client like we've got with AutoCAD right now, but again, with some limited capabilities will be the answer. Now, to get back to a native client for Revit, not something we're working on right now. In the fullness of time, we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Is there going to be any reference to ops during these dev days? And I assume you're talking BIM 360 operations, and the answer is not that I'm aware of. Do keep in mind, BIM 360 has, is it 6 or 7 modules? Some of those are big, robust, hundreds of thousands of users, and some of those are like, revision 1, revision 2 software, which we all know can be a bit rough, a bit early. We'll see how it goes. You've got things like docs and field, that are robust. Design collaboration, model coordination, robust. And then, we have some BIM 360 modules that are teething, ops, planning, and some of the others. So, I suggest if you want to know more about that, you should reach out to us one-on-one. We can connect you with the product manager. You can talk to the product manager on where they're going with things like ops or planning. Or, hey, there's a great new cost module that we've helped build in coordination with the Assemble folks who we acquired, several months back. Brian says, Inels do their design work faster. But when it comes to the other people who need to use the information and having a tailored, simplified views, using Forge data management, using web pages that give them the views they need, whether those views are data only or whether those views have some visual component, 2D, 3D. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that day myself. But keep in mind, there's no one tool fits all. Architects work different than a civil engineer, than somebody doing mechanical, electrical, than a design engineer working on an industrial machine, than somebody on the factory floor, than a construction worker out in the field, a service technician servicing somebody's automobile or an airplane. They all need their own views. But we definitely need to make the data side more consistent and coherent. But again, I will tell people it's not about a single database. It's about federated data. It's about connecting data in a very easy way. It is about having data lives in one place, but there will be these different pools that we connect in an easy way, using REST APIs, using OAuth 2, where it's relatively quick and easy to connect the data and build the experience and the visibility that your customers need. What else? Is there a future for AutoCAD Map? The capabilities of AutoCAD Map have slowly but surely been migrated to AutoCAD Civil 3D. That is the future of people using AutoCAD Map. It's moving up to Civil 3D. You don't need to do it today. We continue to support it. We do basic maintenance. You can go when you're ready. But we encourage you to look at that and make that change. Okay, Dan wants to know, are there plans to add abilities to desktop connector like Dropbox? Is it recommended to share different file types in connector? I know the source of truth is document management. Thanks. You know, when it comes to desktop connector, I am not an expert. And I also think we need specific about, this is about AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, Civil 3D, Max. So what I would ask you to do, Dan, is reach out and we'll, let us know which desktop you're interested in, and we'll connect you with the product manager who's responsible for the desktop connector, because it sounds like you have a detailed question or there's a detail there about what isn't working as well as you would like with the desktop connector today. William Song, is it possible to use the Forge viewer in a WebAssembly framework like Microsoft Blazor? I don't know, William. Reach out. What I would do if I was you, go to the Forge section in Stack Overflow, ask that question. You should know I have engineers who man Stack Overflow. When you put a question there, it actually ends up in our case management system. We will get you an answer. Part of me says, hey, WebAssembly is running in a browser, and then using my Forge JavaScript components in the same browser and them talking to each other, I would think it just works. But I don't know WebAssemblies, and I think that's a great question, and I think it's a question that's going to get asked more and more. So put it up there in Stack Overflow, and let's get the answer out there for everyone else who's going to be wondering about the same thing. And maybe the other thing I love is, I love the fact you're asking about WebAssemblies. You're pushing the browser and you're seeing the promise of the capabilities. And we're running a little late here. We're 15 minutes over. I'm going to try to ask answer a few more questions, but then we're going to have to pull a plug. Will similar services be provided on Azure like is offered on AWS? 360 design. And the answer is Autodesk is not going to change hosting our services from AWS to Azure. We are 100% committed to AWS, and it has to do with what many of you know. Supporting multiple platforms is hard and expensive, and keeping them synchronized. Now, most customers using Forge and using Autodesk services today have them integrated with SharePoint, with OneDrive, and with Azure. It uses standard web technologies, things like REST, things like webhooks, things like, your browser of choice. Maybe you're a Microsoft shop and, you want to use Edge, or as you may have heard, Microsoft is encouraging people to leave IE, to stop using IE, which is interesting. But it shouldn't matter. It's kind of a plumbing thing. Behind the scenes, Autodesk is using AWS, but for you, it's just some endpoints. And it should be quite transparent, and I know it works. Again, I'd say 70% of all the people working with Autodesk Web Services that we have on AWS are doing it from their Azure-based systems, services, and it absolutely works great. Oh, guess what? We got a yes from William's questions about WebAssemblies and Forge components like the viewer. In fact, there's one of Autodesk partners called GDP, and you may want to go to their website, GDP. and they have a product called Stratus, and it uses both WebAssemblies and kind of classic Forge JavaScript in the same app, in the same web client experience. Thank you. Okay, one more question. And maybe not. Let me leave it with, you shouldn't be bashful. You have questions about what we've talked about, feel to jump in on Stack Overflow. You're all ADN members. You can also go to the various desktop forums to ask API questions, or you can go to the ADN extranet and ask a private question directly, fill in a web form. We are here to help. We want to answer your questions. And I hope to hear from more of you over the next 2 weeks as you attend some of the other DevDays classes. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for investing all this time with us, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Jim. And yeah, thanks.
And let me stop the recording.